It's a mixture. It provides tools from the study of abstract systems, provides useful tools which can be applied in policy formation. At least in principle, policy formation should be oriented towards the common good. In fact, it isn't. It's oriented towards the needs of those powerful enough to design and shape it. So, for example, let's be concrete. Take the World Trade Organization, theoretically designed on neoliberal principles, radically protectionist in the interests of private power. So the TRIPS, for example, intellectual property rights, are a radical interference with market principles. They give exorbitant patent rights of a kind that had never existed before to multinational corporations, to the huge pharmaceutical corporations, for example, grants them monopoly pricing rights, in effect. And we've seen that for years, the drain on the general economy from the exorbitant prices of pharmaceuticals, and even from the choice of which ones there are in the hands of private power. That price has been enormous. The one economist I know who's studied it carefully, Dean Baker, has, I don't remember his numbers, but huge numbers. Huge part of GDP just goes into wild overpricing and wrong choice of pharmaceuticals. That's not a law of nature. They say they need it for innovation. You take a look at innovation, you find a different story. A lot of it, as throughout the whole economy, that comes from the taxpayer, either in government labs or just grants to private corporations. There are lots of other ways of organizing innovation that won't just yield extraordinary monopoly pricing rights to pharmaceutical corporations that have money coming out of their ears. That's a very serious question right now. It's a large part of the source of the coronavirus pandemic. It was actually known in 2003, pretty well known after the SARS epidemic, that another a real pandemic was likely to come. And it was known how to deal with it, how to study to prepare for having the basis for getting the right vaccines, understanding the viruses and so on. And not a big secret. The drug companies weren't interested. It's not their business. Milton Friedman explained to them that their role is to enrich themselves. Okay? That's not economics. It's cold economics. It's politics. The result is they're not going to spend money on some catastrophe that might happen in 10 years, or maybe you'll get a vaccine that people will use once and you won't make that much money for it. You want to make money tomorrow on things that sell. It's also a question of choice of things to look at. Like, you don't work on malaria because millions of people are dying from it or poor. They don't have any money to pay. So you do other things. Applies in the rich countries as well. All kinds of things you can get in different sort of ways of getting rid of wrinkles, but not of fundamental diseases, because you get rid of them once you're done. All of this is an extraordinary, not just an extraordinary distortion of the economic system, but having enormous human consequences. And this is a very live question right now, because right now, scientists once again are predicting that when we finally emerge from the current crisis, there's other ones coming, which will very likely be worse. We've been lucky so far. Every one of the coronaviruses has either been highly contagious and not very lethal, like Ebola, or not very lethal and highly contagious, like COVID-19. Who's to say the next one won't be both? It's known how to prepare for it. Drug companies are not going to pick it up. It's not their business. The government can't pick it up because of the neoliberal doctrine. Government is the problem. Enormous government labs, great resources. The government does most of the basic work anyway on development of vaccines and drugs, but then hands it over to private companies because government is the problem. So we have a socio-political system which is setting the stage for further disasters. And economic science can tell you that it wouldn't work like this in a free market. They can tell you that. But that doesn't help economic engineering. We have to make decisions. And they're being made every day. A couple of days ago, the United States government pulled out of the COVAX consortium. 170 countries or so working on trying to integrate efforts to create a vaccine, which would, of course, if with cooperation, there's much more chance of achieving a successful result. Most powerful country in the world pulls out and impedes that. It also, not very effectively, but at least to some extent, the COVAX consortium is looking at distributional problems. How do we ensure that if there is a vaccine, it'll go to the people who need it, like poor people in Africa? It won't be just monopolized by the rich countries. They're at least looking at that. The US says, no, not our business. We're going to do it ourselves. We want to, we'll monopolize it because we're just the master of the world. Well, it's not a joke. It has big effects. Things like that are happening all the time. And to just, do economic engineering without thinking of all these things, that gives you very dangerous results. We've seen plenty of it. We're seeing it right now. So that's not a critique of economic science. It's a call for some understanding and humility, the kind of humility you see normally in the physical sciences. And pre-Trump, you used to see it in the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, or in the FDA, which insists on careful testing before you throw things into the public. Now, a lot of that is being dismantled, just with the goal of increasing profit for private power, for the very rich and the private sector. Those are the circumstances of the world. Can't overlook them when you're doing economic engineering.